I'm Mike.
I'm Sam. Let's get into it.
Got through 26 interceptions. That's still an NFL record. If Joe wants to break that, Hannah, I'd be okay with that. We'd still be friends.
Welcome to episode 14. So, again, not much sports news going on. So, we're going to try to get another debate going with ourselves. So, in lieu of the Jordan Love pick by the Packers, we're going to discuss throughout the whole episode, is it better for a quarterback to be thrusted into the starting spot his first year or to sit on the bench his first year, second year, get some time to learn? So, what's your main argument?
Yeah, this is such a great topic. I love a topic like this because there's so many case studies that we can look at. There's so many examples, counter arguments we can look at because there's been so many first-round quarterbacks over the past decade, 2 decades, 3 decades. So we can look at all those first-round quarterbacks. A lot of them have sat, but most of them have started at some point in their rookie year. So it's really cool to try to study those quarterbacks and see the situation when they start playing and how that ends up affecting the trajectory of their careers. But really, to sum it up, in my opinion, on is it better for a quarterback to start their first year or to sit in their first year of the NFL, I think it is just all dependent on the organization the player gets drafted to and just who the player is as a person.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, like you said, I think it just depends on the roster at hand. Like the Bengals, with Joe Burrow, for example, the Bengals have a terrible record. So I fear that putting him as a starting quarterback might be very detrimental to his career. I think that they should have kept Andy Dalton and had him start this year and had Joe Burrow learn under Andy Dalton and get another high draft pick to be able to add more protection and weapons for the team to be better when Joe Burrow's about to start. So I think it's really dependent on the personnel on the team.
Yeah, and with Joe Burrow could go out this season and have a fantastic rookie season. He could set all the rookie records. And the Cincinnati Bengals roster, I think, isn't as bad as the average first overall pick roster usually is. They have some weapons on the offensive side. They have Joe Mixon. They still have A.J. Green, really great wide receiver. I know that offensive line is completely in shambles. I'll get into that point a little later. But even that defense has some good players on it. They have Geno Atkins. So even if Joe Burrow, again, ends up playing well his first season, he could take the Bengals to the playoffs his first season. I would still say it would be bad for Joe Burrow to play his first season because we've seen this happen before. Andrew Luck, the Colts went from winning 2 games to winning 11 games his rookie season. But still, I think in hindsight, I could say it would be better for Andrew Luck, even though he set all the rookie records as a passer his rookie season. Again, fantastic rookie season. I think it would still be fair to say in hindsight that if Andrew Luck sat his first season, it would have been better for his career because he still got sacked 41 times his first season. Really took a huge beating that otherwise he wouldn't have had to take. So a big argument, I think, against a rookie quarterback starting their first game really is that offensive line. Could that offensive line hold up for players? Because we've seen really talented quarterbacks be absolutely ruined by really bad offensive line play, even if the team around them and themselves play well. So that could very easily happen to Joe Burrow. So that's an aspect where I would argue no matter what the situation is, it wouldn't really hurt to sit a quarterback.
Yeah, with the Andrew Luck point, I think he did take a beating, but like his body style, like he's more of a bigger, burly guy, so that didn't really take effect into his career until like his 4th season because he made the playoffs his first 3 seasons. Yeah. But you look at someone like David Carr, who was on the newly formed Texans, and he took 76 sacks. That's the all-time record for a rookie. I mean, and that really kind of ruined his career more than Andrew Luck is, because Andrew Luck had more of the skill and natural ability to play quarterback. So it didn't really affect him as much, but David Carr, you see how it really affected him, and he became a backup. He wasn't a starter anymore after he left the Texans.
Yeah, David Carr is absolutely a situation. Expansion team, horrible roster, really just new bad organization in the Texans. Still a record that stands today with 76 sacks. I hope that never gets broken. He actually recovered a record amount of fumbles, which is hilarious for an offensive player to set the record for fumbles recovered in 15. And he was, to your point, absolutely shell-shocked his first season. He really would have benefited of another poor quarterback taking the beating that he eventually did take. Another really prime example of that, I think a more talented player than David Carr is Tim Couch. Everybody labels him as one of the biggest busts of all time, and I would disagree just because he's a good player coming out of college, but he got drafted to an expansion team again, like David Carr, but he got drafted by the expansion Browns. There's that very famous picture of the Tim Couch uniform with 16 other names crossed off on it. So Tim Couch was the first quarterback in that horrible line of Browns quarterbacks. But when you get to a point where you've drafted 16, 17, 18 guys in the first round of the draft, it's not the players, it's the organization. So he was absolutely shell-shocked his first couple of seasons. He got sacked 56 times in his first season as a Browns starter. So Tim Couch is another example where if he sat, learned, and just didn't take the beating that he did eventually take, then that really would have helped his career.
Yeah, I think kind of labeling him as a bust is a little unfair. I think injuries really took a toll on him, and that kind of derailed his career more than his skill-wise. But I think the biggest example of starting quarterback versus benching someone is like comparing Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre.
Yeah.
Was it the 2005 draft? Aaron Rodgers was picked. And he thought he was the best quarterback in the draft. Obviously, there's a lot of interviews and like little video clips from that draft of him being very pissed off when he got picked so late. But
yeah,
I know Brett Favre was older in age. But let's see Aaron Rodgers' stats at the 2005 season. 2005, he started 16 games. He threw.
Brett Favre.
Yeah, Brett Favre threw almost 4,000 yards. He threw 20 touchdowns, 29 interceptions, but that's kind of typical for Brett Favre's career.
Yeah, I think the Packers, it's very different, and I know a lot of Packers fans right now keep really trying to stress this. The Packers picking Jordan Love is very different from the Packers picking Aaron Rodgers in 2005. Aaron Rodgers was viewed before the draft, not even in hindsight, but before the draft, like you just said, as arguably the best prospect in the draft, arguably the best quarterback in the draft, along with Alex Smith. So when the Packers saw they're in the mid-20s, all these teams passed on him, and they saw Brett Favre had his worst season, they had to pick up Aaron Rodgers. But in this situation, Aaron Rodgers didn't have his best season. I think he's been declining slightly over the past couple of years, and I think he continued that downward trajectory. But Jordan Love was viewed as the second best, third best, fourth best quarterback in the draft. He was viewed as a fringe first round talent. So it's very different. The Packers really want Jordan Love to be the starter, I think, sooner than people realize. I don't think it's going to take Jordan Love 4 years to play his first NFL start, just like it took Aaron Rodgers. So it's going to be really interesting. In terms of Aaron Rodgers, it really, really, really helped him to sit his first 4 years. It really did. Not in the aspect of learning from Brett Favre, because Brett Favre absolutely taught Aaron Rodgers really nothing from a personal standpoint. Now, I'm sure he learned a lot from Brett Favre just watching him at practice, watching him prepare for games. But if you go back and watch Aaron Rodgers in college and even his first couple of starts in the NFL when he wasn't a polished starter, he had a very wonky, weird release, and he just didn't look that good. So I think if Aaron Rodgers got drafted to a team in 2005 and started right away, was the franchise guy, I think we could see Aaron Rodgers potentially even out of the NFL. I know that's a really bold statement to make right now, but that's how much your situation really does matter in the NFL. He got drafted to such a talented Packers roster, was able to make a Super Bowl appearance and a Super Bowl victory very early on into his starting career. and really continued that playoff success the rest of his career. Now he hasn't been able to reach a Super Bowl since then, but the Packers nonetheless have had a pretty talented roster around Aaron Rodgers for the majority of his career.
Yeah. Like you said, Aaron Rodgers is a very raw prospect, and that's kind of similar to Jordan Love. You don't know what you're going to get with him. So I think Aaron Rodgers, being on the bench, the backup for his first 4 years, he was really able to learn, kind of get that NFL-style coaching to fix some of his kind of less than, like, his very poor mechanics, his poor decision-making. He was all able to kind of round that together to become one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. I don't think if he was, like you said, if he was thrust into the starting spot right away, I don't think we would be talking about him in the same way that we do with the greatest of all time conversation.
Yeah, but make no mistake about it, this is where the aspect that I got into when we first start off this episode, where the player matters just as much as the situation. You can't replace Aaron Rodgers with any other quarterback, sit him 4 years behind Favre, and have the result be Aaron Rodgers. That's absolutely not true. An example of this is Brock Osweiler. He sat 58 games, most notably behind Peyton Manning in his last 2 seasons, and ended up not really having much career success at all outside of Denver. He got that big contract with the Texans, and really soon on, I don't think we've ever seen somebody get signed to be a franchise quarterback and a franchise so quickly realizes that you're not the guy. So just because, another example of this is Tyrod Taylor. He started in his 65th NFL game and really never turned that into a solid, consistent starting job. So just because you sit behind a great player doesn't mean you're going to end up being a great player. You also need to put in that work, because I think with any sport, it's better for your development to play, because you're not going to get that game experience unless you're in the game. But at the same time, getting that game experience, taking a big beating in the NFL, that could also really derail an NFL player's career.
Yeah, I just think it, like with the talent-wise especially, but because that's obvious. But I think just if you're going to be benched or not benched, like start as a backup your first couple of years, I think it just really depends on like your character.
Yeah.
Kind of Aaron Rodgers, some questionable, but he was able to be like, all right, fine, I'll be on the bench my first years, but he knew it was gonna help him in the long run. And a point you made off camera was Dwayne Haskins. He was kind of immature. He wasn't really learning from the quarterbacks, and that kind of, you saw when the games he started really hurt him.
Yeah, that's the biggest red flag for me getting into Dwayne Haskins a little. Not what he did on the field. I know he had 7 touchdowns, 7 interceptions with a 2-5 record. That's not great, but he's a rookie quarterback. That's to be expected of a rookie. Where I really get concerned is when I see every single game in and game out for the first 9 games of the NFL season, Dwayne Haskins pouting on the sideline, Dwayne Haskins sitting by himself, standing by himself on the sideline. If you really love the game of football and you really want to be a great, all-time great player, you're going to be, no matter what the situation is. And we did even see this with Aaron Rodgers. He's not the type of personality to do this, but he knew he needed to do this to become a great player. He stood next to Brett Favre during the games. He had a clipboard in his hand. He was right next to the coach for all the play calls. And we didn't see that out of Dwayne Haskins. We just saw when his number was called, he just jumped right in there. But it looked like Dwayne Haskins was very underprepared for his NFL start. And I know that could probably be contributed to the Redskins organization, but I think that's just as much as his fault as it is the organization's.
Yeah, with the Redskins organization, I don't really think that like Jay Gruden wanted to draft, or the GM wanted to draft Haskins. I think Dan Snyder kind of pushed it more than they really wanted to. Dan Snyder, because Haskins was like, he's a hometown kid.
Yeah.
So they really pushed that just to get that market. But I think that's a really bad kind of movement for the team. It seemed like they were kind of putting marketing over actually winning games.
Yeah, I always hate when NFL teams pick a player for personal reasons rather than just what they are on the field. Now, sometimes it ends up working out, but usually more times than not, your heart over your head. It clouds your judgment. It's just not smart. I think Dwayne Haskins went to school with Schneider's son or grandson, something of that nature too. So he knew Haskins. It always worries me when an NFL team picks a player and in the opening press conference, they talk more about the player as a person rather than the player as a player. So that's what happened with Dwayne Haskins. Hopefully he has a good career, but if I had to put my money on it, I don't really see it going that way. But another example of kind of going off topic a little bit, we'll reel it back into the quarterback conversation as well. But Jalen Reagor as the Eagles pick, they had a bunch of great wide receivers on the board. Not to say Jalen Reagor wasn't deserving of that first round pick, but Jalen Reagor's dad played for the Eagles. The Eagles organization knew Jalen Reagor, loved Jalen Reagor, and in the opening press conference, instead of talking about how great he was at TCU, because he was really explosive, they just talked about how great of a kid he was. And that's great and all, but if that's the reason you pick a player, that's not good.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think if you value that over their actual career, it's really going to hurt you. Like I said with Haskins, they're kind of picking a marketing standpoint more than stats wise, and I think that's just a very bad road to go down when building an organization.
Yeah, and going more into the organization, again, it has such a big say in whether a quarterback has early success and future success. Look at Dak Prescott, Russell Wilson, Big Ben. They all got thrusted into a starting position. Now, I know Russ and Dak started their first game, but Big Ben started very early on in his career too, only a couple games in. He was thrust in the starting role when the Steelers quarterback got an injury, but all really good, near Super Bowl caliber teams, and we saw all these players play absolutely fantastic in their rookie years, and they've all been able to carve out really great careers so far. Russell Wilson is the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. Big Ben has had multiple contracts, and Dak Prescott's most likely going to get signed to a 30-plus mil contract. So really situational. I'm sure Dak Prescott would most honestly probably still be a backup quarterback if he got signed to most other teams. So right situation definitely really helps quarterbacks.
Yeah, Big Ben, he was able to go to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl his rookie year. He only started 13 games, but he really made the most of those 13 games and threw for just over 2,500 passing yards in just 13 games, which is pretty great for a rookie quarterback. But obviously they won the Super Bowl, so they had some sort of Super Bowl caliber roster around him. So that was able to help him excel and not really derail. Like when you have a non-Super Bowl caliber team and you're just throwing passes and they're getting intercepted and you're getting hit, that just makes you you lose the morale in your own self, and you lose, like, your self-esteem just goes down when you're about to start a game. But so since Ben Roethlisberger had those players around him, he was able to make throws, and the players on the team were able to make plays, so that kind of really boosted himself up.
Yeah, you just have to be extremely, extremely mentally tough if you're a rookie quarterback in the NFL, especially if you get drafted to an underwhelming team with an underwhelming roster around you. And there's some players going off at that point where I look at and I'm just amazed at how they ended up having successful careers, even though they got drafted into a pretty bad situation. And it makes me say that no matter what team these players got drafted to, they're going to end up being successful quarterbacks. Two players that come right to my mind is Peyton Manning and Matt Stafford. Peyton Manning got thrusted into the starting job with the Colts, started all 16 games his first season, and he had 28 interceptions his rookie year. And with a lot of rookie quarterbacks, I know that could spiral into 28 interception season after 28 interception season, but with Peyton Manning, he's so mentally tough. He took those learning experiences and really made the most of it and learned, got better, and ended up being one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, as you very well know. With Matt Stafford, I mean, I don't know another quarterback in NFL history who had the cards stacked up against him as Matt Stafford did. He started his first game as the number one pick coming off of a 0-16 Lions season. He had 13 touchdowns to 20 interceptions his first season, so not a good season. Then he went on in his third season. In his first 16-game season, he threw 5,000 yards and went 10-6 with that Lions team. So just an incredible turnaround. So with some players, I think no matter what, they're bound to be bad NFL quarterbacks, and some players, they're just bound to be great players.
Yeah. Well, I think kind of like a tripling factor to Peyton and Matthew Stafford is Peyton had Marvin Harrison on the team and Matthew Stafford had Calvin Johnson.
Very true.
So even if they're throwing interceptions, Peyton went 3-13 his rookie year, but then the next year he went 13-3, which is, I think, the biggest turnaround in NFL history in a 3-year span. I think having those two, like Peyton with Marvin and Matthew Stafford with Calvin Johnson, having those wide receivers are really able to be like, it's all right. Yeah, I know you're young, you're making mistakes, but just keep doing you, and you'll be able to get to the next level. And you see that with Payne, and you see that with Matthew Stafford. I think having those veteran players on your offensive side, it really helps you.
No, that's an absolutely great point. And with Matt Stafford and even Peyton Manning, you see where even if they're not completely polished and they have that great wide receiver, it really takes a lot of pressure off them. And by the time those receivers kind of got out of their prime and out of the NFL entirely, then by that time, Peyton Manning was fully developed into a superstar player. Yeah. And same with Matt Stafford. Matt Stafford actually says, very interesting, that he got much better as a quarterback when Megatron retired because he was so used to being able to just throw the ball up and trust not only his own talent, but Megatron's talent to get the ball. But when Megatron retired, he really had to go through his first read, second read, third read, and just throw to the open man. So Matt Stafford could have had a very different career if it wasn't for Megatron, for sure.
Yeah. Another quarterback I want to go into with Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
So obviously you mentioned Tyrod Taylor earlier, but in a different aspect. But Tyrod Taylor, Baker's rookie year, he started the season. The season wasn't going the way they wanted to, and then Baker was put into the starting role. And I think Baker did a really good job. They went 6-7 under Baker, but the way he performed, he set the touchdown record for breaking Peyton Manning's all-time rookie record. I think just learning under Tyrod, he was able to put it all together. But then this next year, when he started the whole year, he didn't have Tyrod on the roster. It's kind of like it was all on Baker to perform, and he dropped the ball because he didn't have that learning. He didn't have that veteran quarterback to talk to and learn under, and I think that kind of hurt him.
Yeah, that's why I really like that Case Keenum signing that the Browns did make this offseason. But that's a really good point. I think Baker Mayfield, through him being a transfer quarterback, him really just being an underdog, he knows the process. He trusts the process. He knows that sometimes I'm not going to be believed to be the number one guy all the time. So really credit to him. He was the player sitting right next to Hugh Jackson every single game he wasn't starting. He was trying to help out Tyrod Taylor as the backup quarterback. And then when he ended up being the starter, Tyrod Taylor really did a fantastic job of doing the opposite and really helping Baker Mayfield prepare every week and just be a really good quarterback. That's why I really like why Justin Herbert went to the Chargers. He can learn under Tyrod Taylor, who is a career backup quarterback, and just really learn how to be a pro. But with Baker, I really think the Browns could have made the playoffs if he started all 16 games that season, played very well. But to your point, last year, so much pressure on Baker Mayfield. And I think he really created a lot of that pressure himself. I think a lot of that pressure is fair to put on him because he put it on himself. But like you said, really, that's what make or breaks not only rookie campaigns, but sophomore campaigns, where if they have a promising rookie campaign, then the organization completely lets go of all insurance policy and says, you're our guy, all chips to the center of the table. We even saw that with Cam Newton after fantastic rookie seasons, one of the best rookie seasons out of a quarterback we've ever seen, had a really bad sophomore slump, and I think his development was a little bit hindered because of that.
Yeah, just really hats off to those like Tyrod Taylor. They get promised the starting job for the beginning of the season, but then they always they always like, I don't know, swallow their pride, and they're like, all right, we're not the future of this organization. We got to let the young guys get in there, and they think that they're just really helping these younger quarterbacks' careers excel onto a larger scale. And I really hope that Justin Herbert's able to learn under Tyrod Taylor. I don't know, Tua learning under Fitzpatrick, I don't know what Fitzpatrick's ability to teach a quarterback. It's kind of I don't know. Fitzpatrick's obviously a smart guy. People always bring up him going to Harvard, but his decision making and on the field is kind of not that great. So I wonder how that's going to translate to Tua.
Yeah, getting into our next quarterback here, going off of the Ryan Fitzpatrick point, we saw Ryan Fitzpatrick not necessarily try to develop the backup quarterback behind him, but we saw how a backup quarterback didn't develop at all behind Ryan Fitzpatrick last season in Josh Rosen. Josh Rosen's another quarterback where I really think the attitude of the quarterback really, really, really matters. If you're willing to know that it's better for you to sit, then I think just having that mindset is better than thinking you're going to be the best quarterback in the league day one. I think we saw that out of Haskins and he struggled. And I really think we saw that out of Josh Rosen and struggled. He was thrusted into the starting job in Arizona after Sam Bradford just had an abysmal 4 games as a starter and got sacked a ton. Ended up getting shipped to the Dolphins for a 2nd-round pick just a year after being the 10th pick in the NFL draft. Ryan Fitzpatrick started off the season as a starter. They tried to transition to Rosen, and Rosen just really did not play well as the Dolphins quarterback. So that's just another example where I think quarterbacks need to swallow their pride and just sit and learn sometimes.
Yeah. And I mean, I think Josh Rosen and Tua are kind of different from one another.
Yeah.
Josh Rosen has a very affluent family, and he went to UCLA, and he was the starting quarterback for most of his career. But you see with Tua, he was behind Jalen Hurts for a while, so he kind of was able to learn from Jalen Hurts. And you see that, I mean, Jalen Hurts has great character.
Yeah.
So he was really, he was able to get behind. Even he took the pride and he sat behind Tua and he coached him up. But I just don't know if Fitzpatrick will be able to be that mentor like Hurts was to Tua.
Yeah, very true. That's why, again, we got into it after our post kind of draft talk where Jalen Hurts, he's your ideal backup. He's going to push you as a starter to get better, but come Sunday, come game day, he's going to be your number one supporter. He's going to be the first one on the field to fist bump you if you throw a touchdown. I mean, he's that kind of player. So that really did, I think, help Tua. I think he really, even during the halftime of the national championship, I can't imagine being Jalen Hurts, having Nick Saban go up to you and say, hey, man, you led us to a national championship, didn't play too well the first half, so we're going to bench you. I can't imagine Jalen Hurts having to soak that all in and then a minute later go up to Tua and really prepare him to be the starter for the rest of your game so your school could win the national championship. I mean, just absolutely hats off to Jalen Hurts for that. But another quarterback I want to get into real quickly while we're on the topic of rookie quarterbacks kind of being thrust in the starting job is Matt Ryan of the Falcons. He started all 16 games his first season. He took a 4-12 Falcons team to an 11-5 playoff team in his first season. So that's just another example where he did have really good talent around him as well. He had Roddy White, for example, Matt Turner, but that's just another example where really good player, he's going to succeed really no matter what.
Yeah. When I was younger, I went to the Giants-Falcons game, one of Matt Ryan's first couple of years, and obviously when a pass is complete, they say who he completed the pass to, and like every pass he made, well, it was like Ryan to Gonzalez. So Matt Ryan was really using that security blanket, and he was able to really have Tony Gonzalez as a tool to protect him and really boost his morale. If he's maybe threw an interception or threw an incompletion, he's able to throw a little 10-yard dump-off route to Gonzalez, and Gonzalez will make the catch, and that really boosts the young quarterback's morale and mindset.
Yeah, it's a really good point you just made. I think even if that player, that veteran leadership isn't even your pass catcher, even if it's somebody on the defensive side of the ball. I think we saw this a lot last year with Kyler Murray on the Cardinals. When Kyler would make a mistake, you'd have not only Larry Fitzgerald go up to him, say it's okay, but you would have guys like Chandler Jones, veteran guys on the defensive side of the ball, really pick him up, say, you're our guy. You're the reason we win games. So we need to go out, be a great leader, lead by your play, and just play great. So that's a really good point. I think veteran leadership with quarterbacks, not giving a quarterback the responsibility to not only succeed in his first season, but to be the face of the franchise and to really lead your team. That's really asking a lot out of your players. So I think we saw, again, with Big Ben, he was asked to be the starting quarterback, but he most certainly was not the leader of that championship Steelers team his first year. Same with Dak Prescott and same with Russell Wilson. We've seen all those guys eventually evolve into the leaders of their team, especially Russell Wilson. But those first couple seasons of their careers, they were just another piece to a great puzzle for those teams.
Yeah, and I want to go into another quarterback. I mean, I would talk about Patrick Mahomes because obviously his first year,
Yeah.
you start on the bench. He had Alex Smith as a starting quarterback. And then he started the last game of the season, and his stats weren't that great. I believe he threw a couple interceptions. So a lot of people thought, oh no, he's not that good. Look at these stats. But it was one game, and then you saw obviously the next year he became the MVP. Was one game away from the Super Bowl. I mean, he was able to, and they had a great organization too, which is a point you made earlier. But he had the great organization. He had Alex Smith to learn under, and I think Patrick Mahomes really had it all there for him to exceed and become the player he is today.
Yeah, it's a good point. I know going into his rookie training camp, there's actually a big meme surrounding Patrick Mahomes. There's a quote coming out of him that said, I'm having really trouble learning the Chiefs playbook. This is so much harder than I thought it would be. And everybody was like, how long does it take for you to learn 5-yard checkdowns? Which even I said and probably liked, retweeted, whatever, because really the Chiefs offense at that point were just 5-yard checkdowns with Alex Smith. But I mean, just the example of a coach really adjusting his roster, his play style, and his playbook around a player other than, or in contrast to a player having to do that with a team. It's much easier when a player could just go into a situation, a coach loves them, wants to build around their skill set, which is exactly what happened with Patrick Mahomes. I think he would have had an up and down rookie season, but we didn't see him play as a rookie. And to your point, sat behind Alex Smith. I think he was another player where he really, really soaked in being a backup quarterback, and he made the most out of that situation and ended up turning it into an MVP season.
Yeah, and then, I mean, we can go into the same kind of thing with Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
He didn't start, or he was put into the starting spot later in the season, and that kind of turned the tides of the whole season. So I guess you can say that even if you have that veteran quarterback, not everything will be there. I mean, the energy can be off, and then kind of putting that young quarterback in there, the young rookie, can really turn the tides. And you saw that the Ravens were able to make that playoff push. They lost in the first round, but, I mean, they wouldn't have gotten there if they didn't put Lamar Jackson in. If they had Joe Flacco start for the rest of the season, I don't think he would be able to. They would have been a playoff team.
Yeah, that's very true. I think even Jim Harbaugh and that entire coaching staff, John Harbaugh, I'm sorry, and that entire coaching staff really was learning on the fly to what to do with Lamar Jackson. When he ended up starting eventually, you saw the offense was kind of just a Lamar Jackson version of the Joe Flacco offense they'd been running. So that's why they didn't even have great success with Lamar his rookie season. But they're able to kind of look back, say Lamar Jackson's a great talent, have an entire offseason to build a brand new offense around Lamar. And we saw Lamar Jackson be an MVP caliber player this season as he did win MVP. So
yeah, so I just think overall I think if I was a GM or team or head coach, I would sit my rookie quarterback his first couple years.
Yeah,
I think it would be really crucial his rookie year or or during the offseason after you draft him to get a veteran quarterback to start a team. If you don't have one on your roster, I think those kind of really important things. So I think you need that rookie quarterback and you need a veteran quarterback or like a journeyman who's obviously not going to be your franchise quarterback, but will be able to teach and your rookie can learn from. I think those are really the two big keys of creating a superstar in your quarterback.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Now, I think what we're saying here in our ideal scenario of drafting a great quarterback but having them sit behind a veteran, that's not only always the ideal situation. That's not always easy because we've seen just this past year, Daniel Jones and Dwayne Haskins. I think their organizations wanted them to sit their entire rookie season, but the veteran quarterback in front of them makes a couple mistakes, throws an interception. The camera is going to go right to Daniel Jones. Or the camera is going to go right to Dwayne Haskins. And the fans are going to start chanting, we want Daniel Jones or we want Dwayne Haskins. So public pressure really makes these organizations have to start their rookie quarterbacks sooner than they would want to. I think that even happened with Josh Rosen as well. And that's really happened throughout NFL history. So just the ability of patience, not only with these quarterbacks, but with these organizations are just so important. We saw another example of this. I don't think we got into it. Phillip Rivers, the Chargers were really wanted their franchise quarterback. They drafted Eli Manning. Didn't work out with Eli, obviously. Didn't want to play for the Chargers. So they ended up getting Phillip Rivers, a couple draft picks that turned into actually pretty good players. I think Sean Marion was one of those draft picks that they flipped from the Giants. But again, didn't start until his 33rd game, sat behind the great Drew Brees and ended up just hit the ground running, had one of the best offenses in the league his first couple of years in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about this throughout the whole episode. It's just the Chargers had a really great organization around him.
Yep.
That was able to help him so much. I mean, they had LT, they had Lorenzo Neal, they had Antonio Gates. It just really helps a rookie quarterback when they have those great weapons. I mean, Phillip Rivers' skill set. I mean, he is coming out of college. He was a pretty raw talent. His throwing style. I mean, and his decision making. His decision making is still a problem to this day. But I think with that, with the talent he had on the coaching staff, he had Norv Turner as the head coach, and that was able to help him with a lot of really get to the next step as a quarterback.
Yeah, God bless the Colts next season. I really hope Phillip Rivers isn't throwing 3 interceptions a game because that's a shame. I always hate seeing, kind of going off this point of quarterbacks, hate seeing really great teams just be bad just solely because of the quarterback play. I mean, we've seen that with the Bears the past couple of seasons, and I really hope we don't see that with the Colts. They had everything going for them. They had Andrew Luck. Ended up retiring. I can't believe the Colts fan. I want to get your thoughts into this. I can't believe the Colts fans booed him off the field. But really, you can see an organization's luck go from Andrew Luck to an old Phillip Rivers very quickly.
Yeah, I was in my friend's dorm, and my friend was like, "Andrew Luck just retired," and I was like, "No shot, you're lying to me." Like, no, I swear to God. I literally got up from the futon and just did a lap around the building for like 20 minutes. I was not talking. I was like so close to tears. The Colts, they made the divisional round. They lost to the Chiefs. I mean, they were like 2 players away from a Super Bowl caliber team.
Yeah.
And it just all went away. I mean, Brissett played great before he got injured. So
yeah.
Hope there, but I don't know. I don't know what my expectations are with Phillip Rivers. I think the roster is really great, but I don't know what the quarterback play is going to be like.
Yeah, and that's just really unfortunate when you have your superstar player kind of butting heads with the owner. We saw it with in other sports. LeBron James very notoriously butt heads with his owner.
Yeah.
But we even saw Andrew Luck obviously not butting heads with Jim Irsay, but Jim Irsay making comments like, Andrew Luck's not even injured. It's all mental. There's something going on in his head. Just making comments like that, that's even going to discourage players from wanting to play in the NFL. I think Andrew Luck, I mean, he was physically beat up, but more than being physically beat up, he was very mentally beat up. The toll of a 16 NFL game season. Being an NFL quarterback is a 365-day job a year. So just really the toll of that was too much for Andrew Luck. So we saw a great quarterback's career get cut short because of the reasons we're talking about, I think. Getting drafted to not the best organization in the world. Sorry, Sam.
Whoa.
I don't think the Irsays are a first-class NFL family, if we could say that lightly, even though our boy Pat McAfee absolutely loves Jim Irsay. But I think the party animal Pat McAfee loves Jim Irsay, not the punter Pat McAfee loves Jim Irsay. But anyways, going into that point, I think Andrew Luck would still be playing in the NFL as a top 5 quarterback if he did not get drafted by the Colts.
Wow. I think just Andrew Luck's career is a result of the Ryan Grigson era.
Yeah.
You see with Chris Ballard
Absolutely.
on the team as the GM, he's really focusing on defense and offensive linemen, and he's not really. Ryan Grigson always made the flashy picks and
Philip Dorsett.
Philip Dorsett. That's the prime example. I mean, obviously needed an offensive lineman, and then they go in the first round and pick Philip Dorsett, who got cut 4 years later.
Just poor man's T.Y. Hilton, but you already have T.Y. Hilton.
Yeah, and then they also I'm getting a little heated right now, but they also obviously they have T.Y. Hilton, who's a fast guy, and they just never pick any big body receivers. Ryan Grigson was a joke of a GM.
Yeah. It's a shame when people like that just kind of ruin NFL players' careers in a sense. Andrew Luck is such a talent, and I think despite the Colts mismanagement and the mismanagement of Andrew Luck, he was still able to carve out a great career with the Colts and nonetheless had some really memorable moments. Obviously, that Chiefs comeback. I think we watched that game together, matter of fact, but rip Andrew Luck, great career. One day me and you are going to make a long, extensive video on the career of Andrew Luck. Maybe some Burt Jones action in there.
Yeah, I don't know. If I promise you, if Andrew Luck had Chris Ballard as his GM for his whole career, it would be a much different story.
Absolutely. And even Pat McAfee was even alluded to that point. I know right when he was retiring, Pat McAfee, is when Chris Ballard got hired. So I think they had a couple phone conversations, and I know with what Pat McAfee says about those conversations that Chris Ballard is a great guy and just a great GM.
Yeah. Well, let us know in the comments if you think that a quarterback should be benched. I shouldn't say bench, but should be start on the bench as a rookie or be put right into the starting spot. But thank you for listening and watching. We hope you enjoyed the episode, and we'll see you in the next one.